This is the artificial intelligence voice of Peter Attia narrating this pod-slice summary of the Drive podcast. In the bustling episode of the Drive podcast, Dr. Peter Attia is joined by Dr. Tom Catena, a missionary physician providing essential healthcare in rural Africa. Tom's journey started in his college days at Brown, falling in love with the idea of mission work, but unsure of how to marry this with his burgeoning career in STEM. An epiphany led him to apply to medical school at Duke, firmly planting him on the path to humanitarian medical service abroad. This burning passion, combined with his all-encompassing medical training, propelled him towards one of the world's most remote and needy locations. The Nuba Mountains in Sudan. There, Dr. Catena copes with overwhelming patient volumes, a stark contrast to his more measured pace as a resident in the U.S. His expertise ranges across tropical diseases like malaria and leishmaniasis, diseases virtually unheard of in his earlier practice. Throughout the episode, the focus continually ran back to his commitment to service that brought him all the way from his hometown in the U.S. to the underprivileged regions of Africa. From Kenya to Sudan, Dr. Catena's mission was driven by the neediest, looking for, in his own words, browner pastures. Even as he was exposed to the dire realities of healthcare in Sudan, grappling with civil war and scanty resources, he remained unfazed, instead finding purpose in these exact conditions. In fact, the Sudan Civil War further intensified his resolve to provide healthcare in this region, with his hospital functioning and caring for wounded amidst the conflict. His endeavor also extended to fostering growth, assisting in the setting up of a clinical training school, nurturing the next generation of healthcare providers. The hospital, starting with just 15 staff members, including Dr. Catena, has grown to a comprehensive unit comprising 270 staff and over 50 formally trained Nuba health workers. Speaking into Dr. Catena's remarkable journey, the episode is layered with tales of unimaginable suffering and resilient healthcare delivery, but also a profound reflection of privileges, purpose, community, and human resilience, that are touching upon aspects like death, coping mechanisms, cultural disparity, and even the manner in which we, in the privileged world, live in comparison to people in remote parts of the world. It underscores the toll we pay in our pursuit of materialistic comforts. Tom's apparent humility and his unwavering commitment to serving the underprivileged transform seemingly unendurable experiences into a true celebration of purpose, resilience, and hope. The discussion ultimately sheds light on the two dichotomous worlds and how we must be prisoners of our own desires and possessions. In the midst of the political turmoil and civil unrest, Sudan, an intriguing hub of religious diversity, turns into a battleground with the arrival of civil war in Nuba, a densely populated area that has a near equal distribution of Muslims and Christians. The story unravels further with Dr. Peter Attia and Tom Catena discussing the complexities of the region's history, the religious diversity, and how it has factored into the Civil War. And the brutalities of the Civil War started escalating in 1990 when Hassan al-Tabi, a member of the Muslim Brotherhood, issued a jihad against the Nuba people, dismissing the peaceful coexistence of Christians and Muslims. Within Nuba, al-Tabi associated the association of Muslims with Christians as heretic, thus making them targets of the jihad. This led to an intense period of genocide against the Nuba people. Despite the passage of the peace agreement and a brief period of tranquility within Sudan, areas like the Nuba Mountains remain volatile. With the complex geopolitical landscape, the region was caught amidst the power tug-of-war between the North and South Sudan. The monstrous realities of war manifested on June 6, 2011, marking the outbreak of civil war in the Nuba Mountains. During this chaotic period, Dr. Catena's hospital shifted from being a place of healing to a center trying to grapple with the casualties of the ongoing war. The hospital staff had to make tough choices about whether to stay or catch the last rescue plane out of the region. Most of them chose to leave, essentially leaving Dr. Catena to shoulder the overwhelming responsibility of tending to a hospital brimming with patients and casualties with minimal trained staff at his disposal. Despite the grave risks and dire situations, Dr. Catena chose to stay back in the region, underlining his dedication to aiding the war-ravaged community. He could not justify leaving his patients behind, realizing that avertible deaths would mount up if he chose to desert the hospital. And this significant turn of events serves as a testament to Dr. Catena's commitment to his service, reiterating his unwavering resolve to carry out his mission even in the face of an escalating civil war. In the midst of the ongoing Nuba civil war in Sudan, with lives hanging in balance, Dr. Tom Catena and his scanty team of nurses had no choice but to stay, shoulder the overwhelming responsibility, and tend to the casualties trickling into the hospital. His unwavering resilience and dedication to his mission reflect when he recalls an incident that took place on June 16th. The anxious, tumultuous morning seemed to be foreshadowing the daunting events that lay ahead. Some hospital expats decided to leave, abandoning the war-ridden region for their families in peace, leaving Dr. Catena and a few others in charge. Anesthetizing a patient was not part of Dr. Catena's explicit training, but the desperate circumstances forced him and his team to adhere to make-do solutions. With expats gone and patients coming in, they had to resort to manually ventilating the patients throughout surgeries, a process generally mechanically conducted in modern hospitals. This demonstrates the intensity of the situation and their commitment to do whatever it took to provide the best possible medical attention, regardless of their limitations in resources and trained staff. Dr. Catena shares a heart-wrenching incident of the aftermath of an Antonov bomb, a staple in the war tactics employed by the Sudanese government. The victims suffered massive injuries, slashing through the normalcy of their existence, their bodies housing shards of hot-headed metal. One such victim, a young girl, lost her arm while her cousin got his hand blown off. With Dr. Catena's quick thinking, they were immediately prepared for amputations. The types of injuries ranged from abdominal trauma, penetrating wounds, to traumatic limb injuries. Often, patients would arrive with intestines perforated multiple times, prompting immediate laparotomies. Dr. Catena thus imparts his insights on the changing surgical needs in a war-stricken region, translating his experiences to encompass the harrowing realities of a civil war. This engrossing discussion between Dr. Peter Attia and Dr. Tom Catena unveils the tale of endurance and courage amidst chaos, a poignant testament to the resilience of the human spirit. Dr. Tom Catena, the lone surgeon amidst the civil war in Sudan, discusses the wide range of treatment methods available to the locals and some of the long-standing practices that still endure. Lacking specific diagnoses due to the absence of medical machinery such as CT scanners, Dr. Catena highlights that it's his role to conduct exploratory surgeries, essentially becoming his own diagnostic tool. However, it's not all Western medicine in the Nuba Mountains. People still lean on several traditional practices. Febrile illnesses are healed through burning and cutting in specific places to relieve evil spirits believed to be causing the issue. Some stick to herbal remedies, treating various conditions like eye problems with local fruits. Shamans, or kors as they are locally known, play a crucial role in the society, often delaying hospital treatments with their spiritual cleansings and healing ceremonies. The hospital under Dr. Catena and his team serves around 750,000 to 1 million people. Yet many of these patients do not fully comprehend the extent of the world beyond their conflicted and confined society. He shares a compelling story of his mother-in-law, who believed that anyone not from Nuba must be from Kenya, the furthest place she could imagine. While some beliefs might seem shocking to us, Dr. Catena observes that they tend to be unfazed by such shocking news delivered by medical professionals. These individuals, hardened by their strenuous lives, have lower expectations when it comes to medical miracles and are more accepting of bad outcomes. Providing insights into the social fabric of Nuba, Dr. Catena shares about the recent odyssey of his wife, the first time out of rural Africa, a journey from Juba to Dubai that transformed her worldview completely, from witnessing the concept of flush toilets, elevators, and escalators to experiencing the humbling vastness of the ocean and the hyperactivity of Times Square. Dr. Catena's wife personified the immense societal and cultural gap between the Western world and the rustic life of Sudan. Yet, despite the stark contrast, Dr. Catena highlights the importance of maintaining this cultural diversity, letting tradition guide modernity in its own pace, not vice versa. Building upon the challenges of practicing medicine in Nuba in this podcast segment, Dr. Catena shares a touching anecdote about the sense of community in Sudan. During a visit to the Sudanese Community Center in San Diego with his family, he discovered that a Sudanese woman had been looking after an unknown child, demonstrating a profound communal sense of duty and care towards children in their community, irrespective of familial bonds. Dr. Catena then redirects the focus to the overlooked positives of life in Sudan, illustrating it with stories of travelers who embark on long journeys to reach the hospital. The communities they pass through offer deep-rooted hospitality, taking in strangers and providing food, shelter, and care. In the sense of kinship, which drastically contrasts the Western sense of stranger danger, pushes us to rethink what truly constitutes a societal sense of community. While drawing comparisons between his life in Sudan and his family back in the U.S., Dr. Catena emphasizes that everyone has their own place and role in the world, and there isn't a definitive right or wrong way of living. Everyone has unique talents and capabilities that they can maximize in their respective comfort zones. His comfort zone, although seemingly a sacrifice to many, is the remote setting in the mountains of Sudan, a place he finds personally enriching. He also touches on the crucial role of the Aurora Prize, an international humanitarian award he won in 2017, in highlighting the work of untold heroes. This award not only gives due recognition but also helps raise profiles, leading to increased support. Dr. Catena uses his winning to expand the model of healthcare they have in Nuba, connecting wealthy benefactors with grassroots workers in neglected parts of the world. Money, according to him, multiplies the impact they can have. The hospital in Nuba, with around $1 million in annual budget, can see and treat more than 130,000 outpatient cases, conduct around 2,000 operations, and vaccinate tens of thousands of children. The idea of achieving so much with seemingly limited resources emphasizes the high efficiency and impact of Dr. Catena's work in Sudan. Navigating the maze of challenges in Nuba's physical landscapes, Dr. Attia and Tom Catena delve into the sheer complexity of logistics in the face of lacking infrastructure, a road far from typical patient care journeys around the world. Flying supplies from Nairobi, 2 countries away, involves bribes, the shooting of hoops in a volatile pickle setting, weather disruptions, and laborious paperwork just to land supplies at their door. And take up to 3 weeks to transport medication packages, where they are finally picked up and trucked for 6 long hours to the hospital. Amidst these difficulties, the hospital perseveres to order supplies sufficient for up to a full year, despite the inherent risk of running out if even one package fails to get through. They rely largely on the offerings from multiple vendors, sporadic help from logistics personnel, and the constant creative thinking on their part for these exercises acquisition. Turning to disease patterns and mortality rates, Dr. Catena shares insight into a dire situation where the majority of neonatal deaths are resulting from complicated home deliveries in remote villages, where access to the hospital is a privilege not extended to many. The women in these communities often have their first babies at a very young age. Complications like preeclampsia can result in maternal mortality in the absence of immediate care. However, there doesn't exist a systematic approach to collect this sort of data, leaving them to work with educated guesses in their fight against mortality. In the hospital, with its 435 inpatient beds, typically operating at full capacity, Dr. Catena remembers the period of intense fighting and a measles outbreak due to cessation of vaccinations provided by larger organizations when occupancy had skyrocketed as they scrambled to accommodate patients in every available space. And despite the crushing workload, operations continued, with his rounds on some days lasting till the afternoon. Concurrent emergencies, like trauma cases or women who needed immediate medical attention, kept him on his toes. And confronting these grim realities, Dr. Catena's unflinching commitment emerged as the beacon guiding the hospital through its darkest hours. Encapsulated within the pleasantry of the everyday life and learning to find normalcy in the absurd, Dr. Catena and Dr. Attia share some harrowing realities that have marred the existence of the Nuba people and their relentless resilience in the face of constant threats and terrifying situations. Noting with Dr. Catena's experiences of bombings around the hospital, they describe the gut-wrenching terror that fell upon their hearts each time an airplane was heard overhead and an attack seemed imminent. Being bombed 6 times, each occurrence was marked with a dreadful anticipation of the worst and end to life or the horror of losing a limb. Dr. Catena, feeling like a hunted animal, notes how they had to immediately construct foxholes all over the hospital grounds following these episodes, jumping into them as soon as the sound of a bombing plane was heard. The relentlessness of these attacks left psychological scars that reverberated through the lives of children and adults alike. A feeling of being hunted that doesn't easily recede from the memory. Yet, amid all this terror, the strength and resilience of the Nuba people continue to inspire Dr. Catena as they refuse to give up and keep pushing ahead despite the onslaught of brutal circumstances. The emotional trauma, notwithstanding the constant fear and worry, is perhaps worse than the physical degradation of their bodies from the constant attacks. Firm on their faith, they seek solace and find strength in their daily religious practices. However, the knowledge that healthcare resources are scarce and what little they have often fails adds to their distress. The hospital equipment is far from what one would expect in an established healthcare facility. They mention how the lab machines are always breaking down, making it difficult to carry out even simple diagnostic procedures. Nevertheless, even amid all these challenges, each morning they muster the strength to get up and attend to a vast number of patients tirelessly. While the number of patients they see in a day might seem overwhelming and impossible to many, to Dr. Catena and his team, it's just another day at work. Despite the inadequacy of resources, the Nuba Mountains community continues to draw strength from each other in precarious times, fueled by their unwavering faith and unyielding spirit. And could imagine the tag of war between life and death that plays out every day in the lives of the Nuba people. Yet, the conversation doesn't betray a hint of defeat. It's replete with hope and the determination to get up and face another day. Delving further into their enduring struggle, Doctors Catena and Attia highlight the critical issues surrounding healthcare costs and logistics, specifically discussing the astronomical pricing of life-saving treatments like Gleevec and the difficulty in accessing these treatments due to the region's isolations. So the somber reality is that the doctors have to make excruciating decisions about patient care due to limited resources. This reality is epitomized by the dilemma of whether to spend $80,000 to save one patient's life or use that money to save hundreds of others. Patients with ailments like chronic myeloid leukemia might often arrive at the hospital in desperate need of treatment, but are in most cases beyond Dr. Catena's help due to the prohibitive cost and limited supply of the required medication, a situation Dr. Catena describes as absolutely agonizing. Furthermore, the logistical complications of arranging medical supply deliveries in a war zone pose serious barriers to care. The hostilities have left the Nuba Mountains cut off from humanitarian assistance, constraining the ability to transport medications directly into the region. This has created a major obstacle for global foundations eager to provide much-needed medical supplies like Gleevec. A deeper look at the health concerns within the Nuba population reveals a startling prevalence of ailments such as hepatitis B, with nearly 20 of pregnant women testing positive in TB, which they approach with pragmatic methods given resource limitations. Such empirical data highlights the sheer magnitude of the Nuba community health challenges and their dire need for comprehensive and sustainable healthcare solutions. Moreover, the doctors talk about concerning diseases they encounter, such as diphtheria and tuberculosis. They also discuss the occurrence of leprosy, a disease then misunderstood amongst the locals, leading infected individuals to self-isolate even though the disease is transmitted by respiratory droplets and not touch. Finally, they note their low rates of obesity. Other Western diseases like type 2 diabetes and fatty liver disease, and common cancers found like liver cancer and cervical cancer, monitoring these conditions takes a back seat given the more pressing infectious diseases, thus further illustrating the vast healthcare disparity between regions like the Nuba Mountains and more developed nations. As such, these discussions serve to illuminate the harsh reality of healthcare crises in regions touched by conflict and underline the urgent need for sustainable, effective, and accessible healthcare solutions. So the discussion continues as the doctors delve deep into the topic of women's health, specifically related to cancer. The discussion begins with cervical cancer, a formidable disease that affects women, but is preventable if caught early enough. Dr. Catena acknowledges a see and treat technique, where the cervix is painted with substance like iodine and examined for irregularities. Upon identification of irregularities, the affected area is frozen with liquid nitrogen, thus killing precancerous cells. As innovative as this is, the method poses challenges due to the necessity of adequate personnel to carry it out. Discussing breast cancer, the doctor exposes the harsh truth about its prevalence in Nuba. The lack of necessary preventative screenings like mammograms means late detection of the disease, often after the development of palpable lumps, and as a result, the therapy and results are bleak and dismal. A doctor acknowledges the promise of the advanced technological applications like AI in reading X-rays and mammograms, citing the potentially transformative leap in diagnosis strategies. And they also touch on the possibility of running numerous women through a mammogram in a year and having machines completely interpret the results with perfect precision. One interesting advancement that the conversation reveals is the eureka moment of procuring a digital X-ray machine, which proved an invaluable tool in healthcare delivery in Nuba. The worth of such technology, the doctor's stress is stark, bearing in mind the absence of electricity outside the hospital. The solar-powered machine delivers excellent X-ray images, offering a new dimension to the examination and treatment of patients. The doctors also discuss the prevalence, or in this case, the rarity of colon cancer and cognitive impairment amongst the elderly in the population, further highlighting the difference in disease profiles in Nuba compared to more developed regions. Sociocultural aspects such as the residents' unawareness of their ages and their lack of a traditional birthday celebration speaks strongly to the uniqueness of life in Nuba. This, coupled with Dr. Catena's evident comfort and assimilation in this starkly different culture, underscore the profound issues faced by the citizens of this isolating and challenging environment. The discussion also reflects on the personal life of Dr. Catena and his contemplation on handling obligations and risks when starting a family in such a volatile situation. Moreover, the conversation steers to the topic of personal possessions, or the lack of them, and how minimalism plays a huge role in simplifying life, living without unnecessary distractions and truly prioritizing what's important. From his personal journey and experiences, Dr. Catena suggests that the detachment from the materialistic can lead to a more fulfilling life. Their discussion provides some food for thought on integrating innovation, responsibility, and profound human connection in providing healthcare, especially in regions that are most in need. The dialogue moves into the sphere of our societal undercurrents, probing the implications of personal possessions and advertising's role in urging us towards a materialistic lifestyle. Dr. Catena unveils his affinity to a minimalist lifestyle, postulating that the quest for meaning should not lie within material possessions, but somewhere deeper. Interestingly, he compares the grief accompanying a child with his crippled arm due to shrapnel to a suicide case of a staff member's husband in Nuba. The incident left a deep and lasting influence on the entire community as it stands stark against the backcloth of Nuba's survival instinct. It is vigilantly suggested that the primal struggle of survival often averts the minds from contemplating suicide, an introspective and painful condition. The conversation further elaborates on the grim but noteworthy insight that self-harm and suicide becomes prevalent when individuals lose their sense of purpose and disconnect from their inner survival instinct. It is exemplified by the increased rates of suicides among American veterans. The harrowing rates of self-harm continue to grow for the individuals who lose their camaraderie, ties, and sense of joint mission after returning, leading to despondency and isolation. Following this thread of thought, the discussion shifts to the striking contrast between the indigenous traditions in Nuba and Western culture in the context of relationships and marriage. Unlike Western countries, where dating signifies romantic interest, in Nuba, secret loves is the norm, and public dating is considered unacceptable. Traditionally, marriages were arranged, and even today, a family consensus is a prerequisite for a prospective groom before expressing his romantic intentions. This unique courtship dynamic, although engendering strong family ties, unfortunately, limits the opportunity for the individuals to deeply know their future spouses. Moreover, the narrative also unwraps the reduced suicide rates in the aftermath of 9/11 in New York. So the shared experience of tragedy pulled the city together, forging a common goal and sense of purpose, which potentially shielded its residents from feelings of isolation or despondency that often lead to self-harm. It underpins the theme that survival instincts flourish in the face of adversity, shielding individuals from suicidal tendencies. In conclusion, the dialogue revolves around how consequential factors like personal possessions, adversity, and societal norms shape individuals' well-being, sense of purpose, and survival instincts. Dr. Peter Attia and Dr. Tom Catena further continue their insightful discourse, touching upon the intricate weave of societal norms, personal well-being, and resource disparities. Mirroring the functionality of dating apps, which aim to pair individuals with complementary interests, they contemplate a hypothetical framework where a void of purpose in resource-abundant nations could be paired with the resource-deficient sectors that are abundant with purpose. Dissecting the paradox of societal norms and personal inclinations, Dr. Catena highlights how a 10-year-old girl from San Diego could not feasibly help a girl her age in Nuba by just being there. He underscores our social interconnectivity and suggests several ways to make a practical impact, rather than a symbolic one. These include advocacy, awareness, policy influence, and philanthropic donations. Subsequently, the conversation veers toward the striking imbalance in food sufficiency and variety in Nuba. A resident's menu typically consists of sorghum paste, occasionally complemented with seasonally available fruits or a sauce made from pulverized dried okra. Variety is a rare luxury, with meat and other food groups almost missing. This extreme dietary restriction sometimes nudges Dr. Catena down to as low as 150 pounds. The conversation lightens momentarily as Dr. Catena joyfully shares his food cravings, while in the United States, pizza, eggplant, parmesan, and a good cheeseburger The dialogue takes a grim turn as they delve into the recurring health issues faced due to malaria, a yearly assailant in Dr. Catena's life. Not taking any prophylaxis to prevent malaria, he often finds himself grappling with severe symptoms like high fever, nausea, vomiting, headaches, and body aches. The podcast reaches its emotional zenith when Dr. Catena reflects on some memorable yet somber instances from his practice in Nuba. Particularly poignant is the story of a 10-year-old boy who was bombed, left traumatized, and eventually succumbed to tetanus. He also recounts the disheartening tale of a child victim of an incendiary bomb who had a third-degree burn. The conversation leaves a deep impact as they continue mulling over these unsettling issues. Dr. Tom Catena shares some compelling stories of his work as a doctor in Nuba. Anecdotes are truly heartbreaking, like the child with 60-70 burns who lived for 2 months in agony, the girl who had survived burns initially only to succumb later to tetanus, or the soldier who made an impressive post-operative recovery only to die suddenly. These are not just patients to Dr. Catena, but lives lost, families shattered, and dreams crushed in a cruel war. And Dr. Catena's work goes beyond tending to his patients' physical wounds. He recounts the case of a teenager who went out to fight unarmed. Even when the bullets severely damaged his brain, he clung on to life for several weeks before death finally claimed him. It's not just the trauma of war, but also the psychological toll it takes on the survivors that haunt Dr. Catena. Despite the daunting task of running a hospital in a conflict zone and facing such overwhelming loss regularly, Dr. Catena remains undeterred. He suggests that those who want to contribute extend their support via charities like the African Mission Healthcare Foundation and the Catholic Medical Mission Board in New York. However, the heart of this discussion is a profound story shared by Dr. Attia about 2 men walking on a beach covered in starfish stranded by the high tide. One of them relentlessly throws the starfish back into the ocean. When questioned about the futility of such a task given their sheer numbers, the man points out that it did make a difference for the one he threw back. This tale encapsulates the beauty in Dr. Catena's work in Nuba. Every life he helps save or pain, he eases might be just a drop in oceanic problems Africa faces, but to that one person, their family, and community, it's everything. So it's a powerful reminder for medical professionals that their work, no matter how big or small, ultimately comes down to changing individual lives one patient at a time. Check out the full podcast by clicking the link in the description below. Make sure to comment, and subscribe for more content like this. Thank you for listening to this podcast summary episode of the Pod Slice.